Everything about The Beastmaster is epic. This was a heroic film, and it needed a heroic level of commitment. I don't think I've ever been involved in a more physically demanding, more emotionally demanding project.
There was a lot of fire, stunts, special effects. The animals, the sets, there was always some problem, and it was logistically always a nightmare.
It was really a lot of hard work, but there was a lot of heart and soul put in it. And as a result, we all got swept up in the enthusiasm. And that's really what makes a shoot either a pleasure or a drag.
We all believed in it, and we all believed in each other. Actually, it ended up meaning more playing the Beastmaster than I ever could have imagined that it would.
So I grew up just south of Hollywood, about 40 miles, and it was a perfect location for me because, you know, it was far away enough to not really be influenced by the whole Hollywood culture, and yet at the same time, it was close enough for access to the great movie theaters up there. And I just grew up with, you know, with horror, sci-fi, and fantasy films. Those were the things that I just loved.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet.
Especially the sci-fi stuff of the 50s. It was playing on television every day. And of course, one of the great genres, which really turned me on as a kid, was the Steve Reeves sword and sandal titles.
Hercules and Hercules Unchained.
I mean, these were all great films. The epics, you know. And that was, you know, probably one of the early inspirations for The Beastmaster. The movie that got me into filmmaking was 2001: A Space Odyssey. I saw that at about 12 years old, and it spoke to me in terms of the possibilities of movie making. In my teens, I was making a lot of student films down with my neighborhood friends in Long Beach, California. And after high school, I went to UCLA for a year. My first day of college, I turned out my roommate was Paul Pepperman.
And I asked him, you know, as you would ask any new roommate of your freshman year, oh, what do you plan on being? He goes, oh, I'm going to be a film director.
And he said, hey, I want to make movies too. So it was like a match made in heaven. I tried to get into the film department, but you had to be in your third year to get in, and I was very ambitious and maybe a little overeager.
So he just, you know, left after the first year and started making the first movie.
I had managed to convince my father to put a chunk of money up, a very small amount at that time, to start this film.
And then I started helping him.
It's an interesting project because it almost served as my college, because it took 4 years until the film was finally done. It was the film that I really learned everything on.
We just taught ourselves how to do every position on the crew, you know, sound, cinematography, grips, everything. And then we were able to sell the first one to Universal, and once we had a finished movie with the Universal logo on the front, it was much easier then to go out and raise money for the second movie.
It was a really nice little comedy, but it was not a success financially. I decided to try to do something, honestly, a little more commercial, and always loved the horror genre, and that outgrowth was Phantasm. We must have spent 2.5 years in the process of making that film.
Even though it was low budget, we were able to shoot, you know, on and on and on until we got things exactly how we wanted it.
It was really a wonderful experience, Phantasm. And then it went on to be very successful in terms of theatrical release around the world.
That was the breakthrough movie. It was, you know, a very large hit for Afghan Embassy.
And I have to say that probably one of the reasons that, you know, we had success with Jim the World's Greatest, Kenny and Company, and also Phantasm was the fact that Paul and I worked as a team. We could rely and trust one another. When it came around to, you know, what we were going to make for this next project, I kept thinking about this book called The Beastmaster, written by Andre Norton. I'd read it in 6th grade, and it really spoke to me when I was a kid.
We both read the book, and we liked the concept of this character having this great relationship, this trust with his animal team.
It had this great title, and it always kind of stuck with me.
And so we decided to just write a script based upon that one concept of that character and his animals.
It was great working with Paul on the screenplay because both of us had a lot of enthusiasm about this genre. We were able to harken back to a lot of the great pictures from the past that Paul and I were fans of, all the sword and sandal fantasy films. It was our attempt to try to make something in that genre.
It took a long time writing the script.
And we went around and took meetings at the studios and told them about this idea that we had, and nobody really got it. A lot of times, it's very difficult to talk these studio types into your vision. The problem that we now had is our background was making these really low-budget films, and yet this concept was so large. There was no way that we could, make this for $200,000 or Phantasm-style budget. That wasn't going to happen. But we also thought at the time that that might be a way of making it modestly. Fortunately, since Phantasm was successful, there were some doors open to us.
There was a gentleman who had distributed Phantasm overseas, and he had once told us if we came up with another idea, he'd really like to be involved in hearing about it. So we went to him, and he was very excited about it, so he raised the money overseas. We ended up having a $4.5 million budget, and that's what we shot it with. And for us, that was just huge. The pre-production involved a lot of research.
We spent almost a year starting to think conceptually. We had to create an entire world, and so we had to figure out what kind of world we were going to build. The first person we brought on board was this conceptual artist by the name of Nikita Natz, and he was just a wonderful talent. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks with Nikita coming up with ideas.
Conrad E, who was the production designer, came on pretty early.
And Don, Paul, and I would really dissect the script, which, of course, was the key to the entire approach. An awful lot of concepts came with the background I already had, an interest in archaeology, especially a lot of interest in American Indian history and culture. There's a good chance to incorporate Scythian, Aztec, Etruscan, Roman cultures and create a Bronze Age adventure for kids. We had a great deal of latitude and wonderful freedom.
Pre-production was actually a time where it was a lot of fun because everything seems limitless. You can fantasize about how you're going to make the movie, and it's not until you get into full-blown production that you start making the compromises and everything starts getting cut down to what you can actually do.
And there were some exciting things we did.
At one time, it seemed like some of the funding was going to come from Mexico. So Paul and myself and Conrad were shipped off to Mexico City, and we spent a month down there traveling all throughout Mexico, setting up how we would make the film in Mexico.
And they give you the whole country. You can have, armies, police, national parks to burn, whatever you want to do, they'll let you do as long as you go shoot it there.
I was really excited to be filming in that location. But unfortunately, after a month, it turned out there was no money in Mexico, so we came back. And every film I've made has been made in the Los Angeles area. And I'm a very practical person in that respect, and I kept thinking, why can't we shoot it somewhere around Los Angeles? There's got to be areas where it might be possible to do. And ultimately, we found this magnificent ranch controlled by 76 Oil out in the northern hills of Simi Valley.
And it was just wide open terrain. There were gullies and hills and little rivers, thousands and thousands of acres. So we went out and made a great deal to just be able to use whatever we wanted there for as long as we wanted, pretty much. So that's where we did the majority of the filming and the building of the sets down in Simi Valley, California.
We were probably within 4 or 5 weeks of shooting the film, and we had spent months building pyramids, and we were hiring animal trainers, and we were going to have a cast of thousands, and yet we were missing the Beastmaster. I never really had a clue as to who we were going to get to play this role, and it honestly was getting a little scary. And one day, one of the casting directors said, "Oh, what about Marc Singer?" And I just jumped up and down because I knew he would be perfect for the part. I had seen him in this great production, A Taming of the Shrew, and Marc had played this really muscular Petruchio. So I thought, well, the guy can do Shakespeare. He's got a great body. You know, he's the perfect Beastmaster. What more could there be?
I had told my agent, I said, the next thing that comes across my desk, I'm doing it. That was my predisposition before I ever read The Beastmaster. So it came across my desk, I read it, and I said, well, this is great. I can do this for sure. I want to do this one. And the agent said, really, you want to do this? And I said, yeah. I said, are you kidding me? Of course I want to do this. Every actor wants to be a hero. And the way the story was told was wonderful.
And so I met with Marc, and he definitely got into it.
There was no reading. He was saying, oh, no, you're the guy.
Who are you?
I am Kiri, slave to the priests of the Temple of Or.
They whip you like a beast.
I am a slave.
Tanya Roberts was cast as in the role of Kiri, which is the slave girl that was going to become the love interest of the Beastmaster. And she was probably considered one of the most beautiful women in the world at that time.
And we went through all of the women of a certain age in Hollywood. Demi Moore was one we really liked, but one of the money people felt her voice was too gravelly. So someone suggested Tanya, and she came in, and she was, of course, beautiful and gorgeous, and fit the role really well.
I just went in on a regular reading. Oh, yeah, I remember, and I thought I totally screwed it up. And I came home, and I was really upset, as a matter of fact, and then I got a call a day or two later that I got it. Just go figure, you know, you never know in this business. Sometimes you think you kicked ass, and you never hear from them again. And it was totally cool. I thought the script was very unusual. I thought the concept was very unusual. And it just seemed like a cool thing to do. It was just one of those projects which was a first, and everyone was very excited about it. And it was Don's baby, and I just loved the enthusiasm that Don had.
The shooting schedule on this film was 12 weeks. So you're talking about a 72-day shooting schedule, and they were 6-day weeks, and it was brutal. I think that there probably was no time that I didn't think that I had made a huge mistake in starting this project. We're making a movie with kids, with animals, with costumes, hordes of extras. Everything they tell you not to include in a film. So this was a behind-the-8-ball production from the get-go.
It was the biggest crew we had worked with by far. Someone suggested John Alcott as our cinematographer, and we thought it was a joke that we possibly would be able to get him, but he was interested in breaking into American movies, and so he came over and met with us.
And I thought, wow, maybe it might be possible to get the great cinematographer from Stanley Kubrick to work on our film. Because I was a great student of Kubrick films. And what a coup for us to be able to bring a man who had shot battle scenes with Barry Lyndon, who had shot with candlelight. And here's the kind of thing that we wanted to do in The Beastmaster. So I was just beside myself to actually work with this legend. John was really excited about doing something in the heroic nature.
He agreed to do the movie, and so for us to be able to work with him was just a huge boost of confidence.
We steal from the best. Now, that was great stuff in Shakespeare, and these witch characters, they were a twist on Macbeth. The twist was that they would have these just gorgeous drop-dead bodies, and they'd turn around and you would see these hideously ugly faces. For the character of the evil priest in The Beastmaster, we were looking for somebody who would be really outrageous and could really play an effective villain.
Rip Torn is someone we were really excited to get. Don and I had seen many of his movies, really respected him as an actor.
And I'd heard a lot of stories about Rip Torn, that he had been this real crazy individual, very difficult to work with. And yet, Rip turns out to be a gentleman, a really nice, wonderful, intelligent man. The thing that was really cool about Rip is he loved the script.
I must know.
You will die at the hands of Zed's unborn son.
Zed's unborn son will die.
And Rip is a very creative actor, and he came in with this notion that he was going to play the role as a turkey vulture. And I didn't know what he was talking about when he came to me with this idea.
And at that point, you know, we really didn't have the confidence to tell him that. We didn't know what that meant.
But he got with the makeup guys. He wanted to have this hooked type of a nose.
He wanted to have his nose look like a beak. And of course, that ended up being a lot of problems because it was a wax nose. And when it was hot, it would start to melt and move. But Rip was a lot of fun to work with.
And I think his intentions were really good. He's an actor like no other.
Fanatic.
And he just brought a crazed nature to this role that just made it great. There's a scene in The Beastmaster where we learn about how the Beastmaster came into being, how he was mystically taken from his mother's womb, teleported into an animal's belly. It was difficult to make that happen. The easiest part was working with the actress. We put an inflatable pregnancy belly on her. There was no problem there. But we put an artificially pregnant stomach onto an oxen, and it was kind of bizarre. This ox really didn't take to this device. It was kind of a furry thing, and they had it connected to an air tank, and every time the effects guy would hit the air and the thing would inflate, the ox would jump. And so it took a while to get him settled down and to get that shot of it growing.
The very first day I came to the set, they said, just a minute, we'll be right with you. We're just finishing one scene. And they said, okay, release the bear.
It was a Russian bear, and it was literally over 7 feet tall. He is the only bear that was in Hollywood at the time. If anyone wanted a large bear, this is the bear they used.
They've got all that fur. They look kind of cute and cuddly, but a bear is a real dangerous animal. They can run 40 miles an hour, they can climb trees, and they're strong as can be. So they're very dangerous.
He was spooked, and he got away, and we just all ran for every vehicle we could to try and jump into and lock the doors because he was a huge, scary animal.
Father, run!
And he attacked one of the animal handlers right in front of me. They managed to get the bear back under control, dragged the animal handler off between two people, and they said, Mark, we're ready for you now. We were babies when we made this film, and we dedicated ourselves spiritually and intellectually and artistically to this moment, to bring this thing about the way it should be brought about. A typical day of production would be getting up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, traveling an hour to location, and then the day would begin. You'd have to do some stretching exercises and begin swinging the sword and pumping some iron and getting yourself into shape, because what you were going to be required to do was a whole day's worth of football.
We'd get with the different department heads and decide, how are we going to do this? You got to go into the wardrobe department. What are the characters wearing today? We're going to need 30 extras. What are they going to be wearing? You got to get into the prop department. You probably got to go visit with the stunt coordinator. You got to get with the animal trainer. You got to get with your assistant director and give him the general shot list, trying to organize something that's really is unorganizable.
Then we'll fight through the day and make our shots. And you have to act, and you have to also be nice to the tiger.
We were shooting out there in December and January, and so it would be the coldest time of the year.
It'd be, 30, 40 degrees. It was freezing. And it's basically, okay, Mark, strip. Tanya, take your clothes off, get out there.
And the wind will blow, and the director will zip up his parka, and everybody else in the crew will be wearing gloves and so forth, and I'll be standing out there in my hula skirt.
And Tanya's in her bikini thing.
I guess it was just a little tunic of sorts that got shredded along the way. And it was pretty cold.
I mean, we actually had scenes that were ruined because the actors would be shivering during them. And you're chasing the sun. We were shooting during some of the shortest days of the year.
You'd start scrambling, trying to get the last shots done before the sun went down.
You get to the end of the day, maybe by about 5 o'clock, it's called wrap, and then we're meeting for 3-4 hours to plan the next day's shooting.
And then it would be a long drive home.
It was a function of trying to get through every day, trying to get through the shots, and trying to keep people energized.
Don Coscarelli, there's an amazing imagination at work. There's a man who's fearless. To bring something like this from beginning all the way through to its end and create something that's so large and so powerful in people's imaginations, that says a lot about a person.
He was great. He was just totally great. He was so enthusiastic. He was patient. He was friendly. He was just fantastic. It was just really a pleasure.
There were a lot of stunts in the movie, and a large number of stunt people involved, especially during the burning of the village.
A conquering horde comes in and wipes out the peaceful village. Stuntmen on horseback come in there and basically lay waste to other stuntmen in villager outfits. I had some great collaborators assisting on that sequence. Steve Boyum and Chuck Bale.
Chuck Bale stands about 6'4". He's one of the founding stuntmen in the Stuntmen's Association. He's legendary. And he brought in a group of stuntmen from the old days of Western television, Gunsmoke, Wanted Dead or Alive, and all that sort of stuff. These guys ran stunts like a football team runs plays. He would say, "All right, let's go, action." And a house on stilts would burst into flames. The stilts would begin to collapse, and that building would go down, and people would come bailing out of it on fire and fall in heaps. And then he'd say, "You go here, you go there, and you go there." And Vince Dedrick Sr. would come riding through with 6 other guys and beat each other to death. And horses would go down.
You know, horses really don't tend to follow their marks. When you're creating mayhem, it's really hard not to injure people.
So we would actually have ambulances on the set, and they were used pretty often. I mean, we didn't want people hurt, but the stuntmen have a macho pride of trying to outdo each other.
Stuntman Buddy Joe Hooker came in there with this flaming ball, and he's swinging it around, and you'll see it in one scene, and it actually connects with his bicep, this napalm thing, and you can see his flesh is on fire. You know, it was real.
But that's what Chuck did. Horses, dogs, women, children, everything, all in the mix. And in the middle of this, he would throw me. You know, he'd say, "Come running up the avenue. There's a guy riding behind you with a mason chain. He's gonna hit you and knock you down." "Oh, is that right?" "Yeah. But when you fall down, fall on top of this guy over here and pick up a club and start beating him to death." That thing went like clockwork. It was like Super Bowl Sunday. I had so much respect at the end of that day for the stunt professional. To myself, I'm glad I got out of this alive. There are roles in an actor's career that are emblematic. This is certainly one of them for me. You don't look for a role like the Lone Ranger. It just sort of shows up. And you do it, and then you find out you have a great affinity for it that you never imagined. Dar is, he's the right man for his time, and he's the right man for any time. He's given a sword, which in fact we all are. We all have a sword at our disposal. We're given the sword of our personality. We're given that blade to defend ourselves and to carve our way through life. It's a kind of an existentialist tale, really.
Tar, the gods have put their mark on you. And someday, you will find out why.
Dar is looking for the meaning of life, the mystery we should all be striving for. The key to my approach as the Beastmaster is that the animals were imbued with a perfect wisdom. Their love is pure, their actions are pure, their thoughts are pure. So who better for me to learn from as the Beastmaster than those pure beings? The eagle did something one day that was extraordinary. I was standing with this enormous wedge-tailed eagle on my arm, and she said, "I'll show you something." And she, in an instant, drew me into her eye, until I was literally taken from this reality and suspended in the universe that she saw. She gave me a great gift. She said, "This is who I am. This is what my world is." And then she put me back. Pretty extraordinary. And then 2 or 3 days later, she attacked me. When my back was turned, she took off way up high and came down and hooked me with a talon and left a zipper down my back, you know, that sort of thing. Because she hadn't changed. One of my earliest days of filming, they said, "Okay, run over here fall down the hill, and then land in these vats full of oatmeal. And that's what I did.
The quicksand basically is vermiculite and some peat moss that sort of floats on the top of water, and it gives you that quicksand effect. But what makes that quicksand scene, I think, really is Marc's acting, because he's able to act it and make it look like it's sucking him in.
You're gonna go, excuse me, tell me the part where I get saved. Oh yeah, these little fuzzy things are gonna come along. They look like things that people used to tie on their antennas in the 1920s. And they're gonna come and save you. Okay, all right.
The ferrets were really cute and really sweet little animals. The only problem is that they don't really have the intelligence level to be trained. They strictly went to food. You know, you could try to bait them off screen with food. You could tantalize them and they would look and sometimes get different kinds of expressions.
We had about 25 ferrets, and actually in the finished movie, they look like they're doing a lot. I mean, they're the heroes of the movie that everyone remembers.
Ferrets became very popular after that movie. And I still run into people all the time who say, I got ferrets when I saw that movie, and I had them for 15 years. And
my plan was to shoot the film with leopards. The Beastmaster would have this black leopard companion. As we did more research, the animal trainers told us that there was a great degree of difficulty of working with leopards. They were much more skittish. One of the animal trainers came to me and said that we could use tigers. And I said, yeah, but I don't like the stripes. I wanted the black panther. Why can't we do that? And he says, oh, well, we'll just dye them black. You know, so he had 4 tigers and he took them and dyed them black.
I remember that we had cases of Lady Clairol that the animal trainers had used to dye them black.
Unfortunately, to this day, if you watch some of the scenes, the light hits the coat at a certain angle, you can still see the stripes there.
When I first began working with Kipling, I asked the animal handlers, is there something you can tell me that will give me a key into how I'm going to make a connection and a relationship with the cat? And these are very sweet, pragmatic guys, and they work with animals all their lives. They said, oh yeah, very simple. I said, cat, mouse. And I get this. But we were able to reach beyond that. And the tiger taught me how to play dart. Kipling was one of the greatest beings that I was ever privileged to meet on this earth. He was gentle and kind to me and awesome at the same time. I approached the tiger as though the tiger were the star of the show. And every time that we were on camera together, I would make sure that he knew that this was for him. This was his moment to represent the entire animal kingdom and to tell the world why it is that we should make space for them here on this planet.
When we first introduced Tanya into the film, where we have the nymph bathing by the stream, it was really designed to be like something out of an Escher painting. We went out to the Fox Ranch in Agora, and this is actually the same pool where Johnny Weissmuller shot a lot of Tarzan movies. I was really excited to be filming in that location. But there's no natural waterfall. You have to bring in your own water.
So we had to bring in big water trucks and hook them up and turn on the waterfall. It was a really beautiful scene, but unfortunately we had no way of heating the water, so it was freezing cold water.
It was really difficult for Tanya. She had to swim in this pond. It was probably about 45 degrees.
that was cold, I remember. And I remember just, you know, it's embarrassing. It's not a whole lot of fun to be the only one who's naked on the set. I mean, not that I was, but I mean, I was nakeder than everyone else. I mean, everyone else was in duffel coats, and I was in this little thing.
And the animal handlers were real gentlemen. They got far enough away that they had to use binoculars to stare at her. It was just one of those things where you're saying now, a gentleman doesn't peek. And nobody was, so everybody peeked.
So, yeah, that's always makes you a little self-conscious, but it was very quick, and everyone was very professional, and so it was cool.
It was a cute little scene. The ferrets stealing her clothes and Tanya chasing after them. And she was really a great asset to the film. It was really dazzling to see her through the camera. We were just surprised that someone could look so perfect.
Don't move. The beast is fierce.
She was just beautiful.
And really a gifted athlete. Somebody with that kind of beauty who also is a really finely coordinated athlete is pretty special.
I was used to doing a lot of, being very physical in my own life. There were lots of stunts, and there were lots of scenes outside. And there was just a lot of climbing around, if I remember. You got a good workout on the set.
And what was amazing about Tanya is that work ethic as hard as any man's.
She was so hardworking and dedicated to the project and put up with all of the physical discomforts of the making of the film that I think that a lot of prima donna actresses just wouldn't have put up with at the time. So we're really lucky to have her. A key story component of The Beastmaster is the fact that he comes across this strange race of winged creatures who he sort of develops a strange relationship with.
That was one of my favorite sequences. I loved the eeriness of this. That was actually filmed on a soundstage.
That was totally built on stage because of size, and it was overwhelmingly gigantic, primarily fiberglass over a wood construction.
And we draped these little pods, which supposedly were like the embryonic wing creatures.
The pods were translucent material that were lit from within and pulsated, and 90% of what I do is lighting. If it's lit properly, it makes all the difference in the world. And with John Alcott, of course, it looked good.
And so the Beastmaster came upon these otherworldly wing creatures. The plan was for these wing creatures to have a way of doing in their enemies in a spectacular fashion. So we came up with this idea that they would wrap them with their wings and then digest them. And then a bunch of bones and goop would come out of them at the end of the process. And it's kind of a bizarre notion, but we had a lot of fun with it. We were looking for a boy who could play the young king role. A lot of times kids tend to be very cute for television commercials or whatever, and we weren't looking for that at all. We wanted a kid who had a little dignity about himself and a little courage, and Josh seemed to have that.
I was 12 when we shot the movie, and it was an incredible way to go through puberty, let me tell you. Here I was in this incredible fantasy movie setting with swords and fire and animals. As a child, it was a dream come true. And it's just about the time when a young boy starts noticing the opposite sex, and Tanya Roberts was just so nice to me. And I think she had a little bit of fun with me, maybe to get under Marc's skin. She'd say, "Oh, Josh, come sit with me. Let's spend some time together and hang out." And she would be very physical and just a real friendly way. She enjoyed teasing me and getting under Marc's skin. She enjoyed that, but not as much as I did.
Seth, look.
John Amos is the traveling companion for the young king. I was always a great fan of John Amos.
We wrote the role for John Amos pretty much with him in mind.
And I think John was also really excited about the script. His fighting weapon was just this stick. So we gave it to him, and for weeks and weeks he was practicing with this stick. It was something that he was really excited about. There's a certain serenity about John Amos.
And I hope someday to be able to repay your kindness.
Life is a circle. I'm sure we'll see each other again.
He's powerful, but he also has an inner strength about him. And that was something that I was quite taken with.
He was one of the most fun people on the set to work with. He had been a stand-up comedian prior to being in movies, and so he always kept the crew in stitches.
He would make me laugh nonstop. I remember a situation where we couldn't stop laughing, and we did take after take, and he just kept laughing and laughing, and I was nervous. I thought we were getting in trouble.
I remember walking around the side of a set once, and I was dressed in my leather hula skirt, and John's coming in this strange S&M outfit that he's wearing with skulls on it, and the two of us caught sight of each other like this and literally fell to our knees laughing and couldn't stop for, I think it must have been about 5 minutes or so.
He was a total joy to work with.
Receive this child as a gift from your devoted servant.
Rip is a terrific natural actor. I mean, you can put him in front of a camera in any kind of a situation, and he'll pull out some kind of interesting, believable performance.
Only the blood of this child will make I look upon you with compassion again. Only the blood of this child. I offer this humble sacrifice.
Rip Torn would give you his heart, if he could, in the middle of a scene, reach into his own chest and pull out his own beating heart and hand it to you and say, here, work with this. I used to love just to watch him work, whether I was in a scene of his or not. I'd be off camera just watching him.
For this character, he just had to be out and out bad. He would stay in character. You know, a lot of the assistant directors and associate producers and those people, he would terrorize them. But he was a very, very sweet, kind, and intelligent individual.
Dennis, I'm going to have to go right in the front door.
Now, Conrad had a tremendous amount of work on his plate. He not only had to create this city and this pyramid, but he also had to create all of the props and weaponry. I mean, it's a massive amount of stuff.
We had 5 shops in North Hollywood. And we had 3 crews going 24 hours a day. So we were constantly working on the film 24 hours a day.
Dennis, I'm going to have to go right in the front door.
The crew, I'd say things like, you can sleep when you die, and stuff like that. It was always my approach to have everything completed very early so that the talent and the director could spend time in the set. Our caves, our tunnels, entire villages were essentially pre-built, and the final assembly took place on stage. It was done as much as possible in advance, but on a tight shooting schedule and with a limited budget.
Simi Valley is basically a desert, and to our everlasting regret, I learned very late on the Indian definition of Simi. And Simi means wind.
Or incredibly windy valley, or something like that.
And what wind means is that about halfway through shooting, this huge windstorm came in and blew all of our sets flat.
We had entire villages wiped out.
So it's just a complete, devastating situation. We had to stop because our sets had been destroyed and had to be put back up.
That was the hardest part, probably. But that's something you have to work with.
The first reveal of the city, I think, is one of the most interesting shots of the film because it's a foreground miniature. The camera was based on this nodal point apparatus, so we were able to have the Beastmaster about 20 feet away from the camera, and then you just hang the miniature right there in front of camera. We took a smoke pot, and we put that out about 300 yards and lined it up so it looked like the smoke is coming out of the pyramid. The trick was that there had to be very high intensity lights and broad sunlight so that you could get a depth of focus. And then we would pan him into frame and come over, and then we would see this tabletop miniature that is only about 3 feet from camera. We spent, weeks figuring out how we were going to make this thing happen.
John, do you need the light to the first version of the wall? First one I've got the light for. I think all the walls are.
John Alcott was so talented. He always likes to shoot with the lens wide open and very low light levels. He's the first guy that ever taught me about negative light. I'd always been involved with using reflectors and bouncing light into people, and yet John would subtract light. And I thought, why did I never think of trying that before? He had a tremendous bag of tricks when it comes to cinematography. He had a briefcase he brought onto the set that had about 35 different flashlights of different wattages.
And he goes, Has anybody got a styrofoam cup? And he tore off the bottom of it, and he took a pen light out of his pocket and shined it on the little white thing and sort of did this into my eye like that. He said, "We're ready." That's what kind of magic this guy could make with light.
We were thrilled with the cinematography that he did. And we learned a huge amount just, watching him in action.
A testament to the integrity of John Alcott is that about the first week into shooting, the powers that be decided that I didn't know how to direct and they were going to fire me. It was pretty shocking to me, and I didn't really know how I was going to handle this. And I told John about it, and next thing I knew, John, who I'd only known for about 3 weeks and who had brought his entire family over from the UK to start a new life here in Los Angeles as a cinematographer, went and told the production that if Don went, John was going. He stood behind me and kept me from getting fired off of the film. John was one of the most heroic people I certainly met in the making of The Beastmaster.
The pyramid was going to be one of our key exterior sets, and so it took a long time to build it. And there was a little bit of a design error.
And part of it's my fault because I had asked for a pyramid much like the Central American Mayan pyramids, where it was really sheer with these stairs that went up. But to get that effect, you had to have very narrow stair steps, and you needed to have a very steep incline. And from a distance, the thing looked great.
But the steps were only 6 inches deep, and so it was very, very challenging for any of the actors or the crew to be able to move up and down the pyramid. We used to have a large rope down the middle of the pyramid, and you would use that to kind of hold on to.
We would crawl up on all fours. It was ridiculous. And the finale sword fight takes place on the pyramid. To get on it and to actually do this sword fighting was insane.
Marc Singer somehow, I don't know if he practiced, but he was the only one able to run up and down those steps and make it look easy.
I've always had a good set of wheels. But boy, oh boy, it was a heart in your throat time. The steps were enough for a toe hold. And going up that pyramid, it was an angle, I'm not kidding, about like this.
I think I had an advantage. I was a kid and I had smaller feet. I found it very easy to climb up and down the pyramid. I was running up and down and swinging the sword, and everyone would get nervous. "No, don't do that." And I'd do it, and that'd be over, and it was a lot of fun.
I was used to being dragged around, but I remember working on that, just climbing up and down all day. Falling down it a couple of times. Yeah, we were out there for a long time. And everything was very safe, but it was kind of spooky because we truly were on a little mound, way, way up. But I remember that being really hot. I just remember Rip Torn getting really pissed. He's a phenomenal actor, but he was a little temperamental, as I can remember, but he was great. He was great. But, everyone wanted to kind of get it going, get it over with. And it was amazing what we got done, and how quickly we got it done.
The Beastmaster concludes with this epic battle at the gates of the city of Ark. The Beastmaster and the slave girl, and Seth and the boy have to battle off a barbarian horde or come to conquer. We spent 2 full weeks shooting the sequence. It was 2 full weeks and nights. We started with the approaching horde. I think we had 50 horseback riders
And what they did is they dug a moat about 30 feet wide and the length of maybe a football field or two, and they filled this with kerosene and naphthalene and every other flammable liquid that you could imagine.
And so then we had all the horses line up, and that we had them then run into the water. Now we had a lot of dirty, upset, muddy horses running around.
And then once they're in the water, then we light the whole thing on fire and create this massive explosion. And so this was a challenge to make sure that the horses weren't injured, and also for the stunt guys. For the actors, it was really intensely difficult.
It would be a disaster if anything went wrong, so it had to be done very carefully.
And when they touched that thing off, it was like the world was split in two. A fireball 6-8 stories high divided the night.
It was like the 4th of July times 10. I mean, it was incredibly bright, incredibly warm.
It was much bigger than we actually had anticipated. It kind of threw everyone back.
It was really astonishing. Yeah, try not to cringe. It's so hard when you're right in there and right down there.
These guys are all down there in the shot, and it's raining down fire.
When they saw that volcano of fire raining down on them, some of the dead people in the scene got up and ran off. To see people riding horses through flames and leaping horses through flames was one of the most amazing things that I'd ever seen in real life.
I mean, there were 50, 60 horses there. There was fire. All these warriors were decked out in just incredible costumes, and the whole thing was just like a dream. I mean, it was absolutely surreal.
And to see men crawling out of the flames to attack you. And when you realize that every one of these guys had spent a lifetime being bruised and knocked about in every form of stunt imaginable, gave you the very strong notion that every encounter you had with them was going to be all you could do to stand up to. Tony Eppers, who played the horned bad guy, he's just one of those guys that could just knock you through a wall. And so even when he's being gentle, it's all you can do to withstand it. And he holds up a sword as big as a '57 Cadillac bumper and says, "You're not gonna let them let me swing this at you, are you?" And I go, oh my God, I'm gonna have to fight this guy.
Marc had the real physical stuff. He was fantastic. He was pumping iron all the time. He was in outrageous shape. I knew that it could be dangerous, but all the stunt people were great, and they showed us what we were doing so we weren't totally confused. And it was totally safe and cool.
It was a huge undertaking, and that was probably the most amount of crew and stunt people and cameras that we had for in any part of the movie was that whole final battle scene.
When you come to the end of a film, it's like staggering across the finish line at a marathon. I mean, just finishing the thing, you deserve some congratulations and some pride just for having survived.
It was a very intense period of time, but it went by very quickly. When we finally wrapped, I was sad. You know, I didn't want it to end. It was like summer camp coming to an end.
The usual emotion when a film is over is to feel nostalgic immediately. Everybody has already fallen in love with each other, and everybody says, I'm really gonna miss you. But when this was over, everybody was exhausted. 3.5 months of this, and we were done. We were done.
We were out there for a long time, and it's just, hey, some hard work, but everyone did it. And everyone was very excited about it.
I think that a lot of that passion does show up in the final product. Unfortunately for The Beastmaster, there were difficulties with the financial powers that be, and I was ultimately banned from the editing room. I didn't have a lot of control over the editing of the film. There was advice given to the financiers that the film was too short, and so rather than go back and extend certain sequences, the editor was actually given the instruction to go back and just lengthen every shot. It would have been a different film if Paul and I would have had control.
Born with the strength of a black tiger, the courage of an eagle, the power that made him more than any hero. The Beastmaster.
The Beastmaster was released in August of 1982 in about 1,200 theaters, pretty broad, but generally there was no marketing concept for the film whatsoever.
It just kind of showed up one day in the movie theaters, and the audience reaction, those who saw it, was a pretty good reaction. Unfortunately, it wasn't a real big moneymaker at the time.
The real surprise came, years later with its penetration in the television and video markets.
It started being shown on cable over and over and over again.
It was playing all the time. In fact, the film it became so successful that it became a running joke for comedians. A comedian on The Tonight Show once said that HBO actually stood for, "Hey, Beastmaster's on." They played it over and over again, and a lot of people would watch the thing over and over and over again.
And they grew up and they showed it to their kids. And running into them now, the response is just fantastic. Everyone tells us they love the movie.
I think that the film appeals to a very broad demographic. You have the animals for the kids, and you've got handsome Marc for the moms, and you've got beautiful Tanya for the dads.
I think that people really enjoy the fantasy aspect of it, the stunts, the special effects. This was something that we felt strongly about having this done as well as possible. I've come across a lot of people, too. It was the first time they saw a topless actress in a movie sing Tanya. She has been burned into their collective memory for all time.
Boys say to me, well, I watched you a lot when I was coming into puberty. I was their favorite. That was their favorite movie, so I hear that all the time.
It had some exciting moments, it had some scary moments. It had some moments of humor. It didn't take itself too seriously.
And it's gripping. There's something about it. I don't know. It's just a really good film. And it was sincere. That guy's sincere. When I see him, me, removed at this distance, and when I see those animals and the relationship that he has with them, that connection is so strong and real. The guy with the sword and the animals aren't kidding. All of us want to be a hero, to stand up in front of the audience and say, we should all be like this. And it actually takes a degree of bravery to declare that. But standing up for certain values is what a hero's all about. And the Beastmaster was that for me.
I run into people who've seen The Beastmaster 45 times. They probably know the film more intimately than I do, which is really cool, because when I was a kid, there was a TV channel that would play movies, 5 times a week, and I would watch, some of these great epics with Steve Reeves. It's a weird, as John Amos says, life is a circle. And it's kind of cool that I would be involved in a movie that ended up becoming like sort of a Saturday afternoon popcorn type movie, much like the ones that I grew up on as a kid.